On today's show, the Golden State Warriors trade Jordan Poole for Chris Paul. How does CP3 fit in Golden State? Why did the Warriors make this move? Does CP3 give them more than Jordan Poole does? And how does this impact the pending free agency of Draymond Green? What are the chances the Warriors are able to bring Draymond back this summer? We're going to break it all down for you coming up right here at Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA, the biggest stories with the local experts. I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know that the part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Joining us now is the host of Locked On Warriors, Cyrus Saatsaz, so you can track down wherever you listen to your podcasts and on YouTube. Just search Locked On Warriors. And Cyrus, man, what a trade. We haven't even hit the fireworks of the NBA offseason yet, but Chris Paul, of all people, is headed to the Golden State Warriors. Jordan Poole on his way out. I don't think I would have ever had this on my bingo card, Cyrus. Chris Paul in a Golden State Warriors jersey. It almost feels like we're in the upside down in like Stranger Things, if you will. And it's like we're in this weird otherworld scenario. What's your just reaction to Chris Paul, to Chris Paul donning a Warriors jersey, which is going to happen in the not so distant future?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a few days now, so it's absorbed. I think people are starting to get used to it more. But when it first happened, yeah, like everyone else, it was shock, surprise. I mean, befuddlement. It's a weird trade because by itself, if the Warriors don't do anything else, it doesn't make much sense. This team they got smaller because of it. They got older because of it. They're not world championship contenders, in my humble opinion, with this roster the way it's currently constructed. Now, if this is like part of a bigger plan, I'm curious to see what the final plan is, but this team still needs size. And until they address that issue, this is just kind of like a Band-Aid. But look, I'll say this. Steve, I don't know if it's Steve Kerr. I don't know if it's someone in the front office, Joe Lacob, but someone there for the last few years has been really wanting a veteran backup point guard, like a traditional, like a pass first, floor general type point guard. They pursued Goran Dragic a couple of years ago. They pursued Patty Mills a couple of years ago. They tried to trade or acquire Patrick Beverley this last season. And they finally got their veteran backup point guard. They finally got him. Again, I don't know why, Kerr has wanted this so bad, but he's got it. And now we'll see, if it's worth it. So it is crazy, though. It's insane.
The fit is a little curious when you think about it, because this has got to be a situation, right? There's no way they're bringing in Chris Paul to start, right? Like, he's coming in, he's going to come off the bench, you're the Warriors guy, but I don't imagine a world where Chris Paul is starting and you start him and Steph in the backcourt together. It just doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense. You're right. I mean, what makes sense is him coming off the bench and leading the second unit. Mm-hmm. If the team keeps Kuminga and Moody, he would be fantastic in terms of leading, those younger players and hopefully helping develop them in the process in year three. But one of the many bizarre things about this trade is that it makes sense to bring him off the bench, but in his long career, he's never once come off the bench. Like as a rookie, regardless of what phase of his career, he has always been a starter. I mean, that's a crazy fact I just learned recently following the trade. So, is he going to be okay with that? Is he going to adapt to that naturally? I mean, I don't know.
We could just be at the point, the chapter in CP3's career, right, where like it's time for him to kind of face the reality of his situation. And at this point in his career, right, injuries have been a big problem for him. If you can keep him kind of in some bubble wrap and have him be your super sub sixth man off the bench, and while I do think the idea of him starting like next to like Steph and Clay is weird, I do think there's a world where you're not going to it's not going to be one or the other on the floor between Steph and CP3. Like there's going to be some times where those guys are sharing the floor together, right?
Big time, yeah. And I think that's where they envision Chris Paul really thriving, is setting up players like Steph, setting up players like Clay for optimal, positions on the court to put up threes or whatever scoring opportunity they have. Look, there are some positives to Chris Paul coming to the team, besides the fact that he's a Hall of Fame or future Hall of Famer. For starters, the only option the Warriors have outside of maybe trading Kuminga, and that's still a possibility. Like my strong feeling is they're not done with moves. But the only way they're going to upgrade this roster is either by trades or by veteran minimum deals. They no longer apparently have the mid-level exception, although I'm as confused, I think, as everyone else about this new CBA in terms of what is being implemented this year, what is they're holding off on. Supposedly the mid-level exception is no longer an option, but yet they could still spend money to buy second-round picks. I wish they did this last draft. So I have no idea what rules are in and what aren't yet, but apparently they can't spend the mid-level. So you're going to need Chris Paul to help you recruit veteran free agents. If the team is all in for a fifth world title in 10 years, that's a goal. You're going to need some decent players who are going to take a pay cut, who are going to take a price reduction to join this team. And maybe Chris Paul helps you there. And the other thing is, looking a little longer term, Chris Paul has a team option for $30 million next season. And so what the Warriors could do after this year is exercise that team option for 30 mil and then trade Chris Paul for another longer term asset after the season. So there are some benefits to him coming, obviously, but it's weird. This whole thing's weird.
How does I think that's the perfect way to say it. It's weird, right? It's just weird. It's gonna be weird seeing him in a jersey for the first time. It's gonna be weird seeing him. It's the whole situation just weird. But how much does this play into the pending free agency for Draymond Green? Is the other part that I think is so important to kind of consider here, because Draymond has been the table setter for this iteration of this Warriors team for the better part of the last decade. And now you've got a different kind of table setter in Chris Paul, who might be able to mitigate some of that loss if the Warriors were inclined to let Draymond walk, if they're not hell-bent on bringing him back.
Oh yeah, I'm almost positive Draymond's going to come back. You're right. This was, in a lot of ways, I feel like an olive branch that the team presented to Draymond as sort of an enticement to have him come back to the team. Because there are teams out there like the Sacramento Kings who have the cap space, who have the interest. There's a lot of interest for Draymond Green. He does have options, but all indications are he will stay with the Warriors. I read a report that it's going to be likely for a 3-year deal so that him and Steph finish their careers, or at least finish their next contracts together. They both expire 3 years from now. So you're right, though, that the move was in a lot of ways done as well to placate Draymond Green, because that was not working. And it is weird that Draymond's the one who committed the punch, yet he's the one who's getting his way when all is said and done. I mean, it is kind of like messed up in a little bit that Jordan Poole was basically sent to the purgatory known as the Washington Wizards. But nonetheless, I mean, Jordan Poole got shipped off. And and that is another positive for this Chris Paul trade. The Warriors did get better by swapping Jordan Poole for Chris Paul. Like that is an upgrade. That's actually a considerable upgrade. Like you're increasing your basketball IQ, you're increasing your ball handling, you're increasing your defense. You're increasing your mid-range shooting, which Chris Paul is exceptional at. So they are better. But he has to stay healthy. Rick Celebrini, who heads the medical staff for the Warriors, has his hands full. 2 years ago, he had a project in Otto Porter Jr. and keeping him healthy. And he succeeded. It was a very strict regimen where OPJ was not allowed to play past a certain amount of minutes. He wasn't allowed to play back-to-backs, and the minute restriction was even kept through the postseason. So there's a very strong possibility Chris Paul will go through a similar regimen like that. given his health history, given the fact that his body oftentimes breaks down when the postseason starts, like at the worst time possible. So Rick Celebrini will have his hands full, but he's succeeded, and he's widely revered as leading a medical staff for an NBA team. And Chris Paul is his next project. Keep him healthy for the postseason, because that is going to be potentially a huge difference between the Warriors being title contenders and them being also rans.
How will CP3 ultimately fit in with the Warriors? What happens with Draymond Green? Will Golden State ultimately bring him back? You'll have us covered for all of that and more over at Locked On Warriors. Cyrus, yes, I appreciate you stopping by Locked On NBA with me.
Anytime, man. Thanks, Jackson. Great to see you.